Let me see if you can say amen to that.
Let me see if you can say amen to that.
God says, be better. Somebody shout better. God says, stop nickeling and diming me.
Where does my money?
God says, stop nickeling and diming me. God says, stop nickeling and diming me.
Where does my money?
When I'm keeping your heart beating and the blood running warm through your veins, keeping you clothed in your right mind, letting you wake up and then helping you to get up. God says, be better. Be better. Be better. Be better. Now listen, you haven't given an offering until you first pay your tithe. An offering is anything over and above your tithes. Amen. Now listen, you haven't given an offering until you first pay your tithe.
Until you first pay your tithe. First pay your tithe.
And we need to wake up. We are being played. And I hope that you guys get this message and we can take action and stop this nonsense.
The news giants aren't reporting this. They only fuel the fictitious numbers to subject you, interfere and control you. This has to be exposed. Take your freedom back.
I now recognize the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Stubbe, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to pick up where I left off. Mr. Pichai, there are rioting groups that are going unchecked with the posting of what I would contend is very... Yet, yesterday I was sent a YouTube video about doctors discussing hydrochloroquine and discussing the not dangers of children returning to school. And when I clicked on the link, it was taken down. And then I was sent a different link on YouTube and it was taken down. I just checked again just to make sure, and it says that this video has been removed for violating YouTube's community guidelines. How can doctors giving their opinion on a drug that they think is effective for the treatment of COVID-19 and doctors who think it's appropriate for children to return back to school violate YouTube's community guidelines when all of these videos of violence is all posted on YouTube?
Congressman, we believe in freedom of expression, and there is a lot of debate on YouTube about effective ways to deal with COVID. We allow robust debate, but in the area during a pandemic, we look to local health authorities. So for example, in the US, it would be CDC, for guidelines around medical misinformation in a narrow way, which could cause harm in the real world. And so for example, if there is aspects of a video, and if it explicitly states something could be a proven cure, and that doesn't meet CDC guidelines, it's
free expression of speech, and you have these doctors who are giving their opinion as doctors, and I don't understand why YouTube and therefore Google thinks it's appropriate to silence physicians and their opinion of what can help and cure people with COVID-19.
The woman in the video I am about to show you reported that if anyone types any 3-digit number, followed by the words new cases into Google, it would return news articles or other reports about COVID-19 in the search results. She claimed that the coronavirus pandemic was nothing more than a conspiracy theory. Does Googling any 3-digit number, followed by new cases, return coronavirus-related articles? Mostly true. I typed a set of 3-digit, as you can see here, into Google followed by new cases, and in every instance, I did get results related to rising COVID-19 cases. For some numbers, typically on the higher range of the 3-digit set. What could this mean? To keep the masses in fear? So Bill Gates and his deep state globalists can vaccinate you and depopulate the earth?
Ileana Murillo is Google's head of multicultural marketing. Does Miss Murillo do good work?
Her work, but she's an employee of Google, and we are proud of our employees.
Your head of multicultural marketing said you were pushing to get out the Latino vote, paying for a ride to the polls for the Latino vote only in key states, and you're saying that's not accurate.
Yes, that's right. We haven't found any evidence to substantiate
So
any
she
of
just made it up out of thin air the day after the election and wrote this email to your top executives, and it's not true?
Congressman, I'm happy to follow up, but employees today do their own
I
activities.
don't want the follow-up. I want the real answers right here in this committee.
As I said earlier, we've looked into it. We didn't find
Did you
it.
push to get out the key vote? And I would say the two most populous states for Latinos would be California and Texas. Did you push to get out the Latino vote and pay for people to go to the polls in California and Texas?
We as a company didn't have any effort to push out votes for any particular demographic. That would be against our principles. We participate in the civic process in a non-partisan way, and we think it's really important we do it that way.
I have an iPhone, and if I move from here and go over there and sit with my Democrat friends, which will make them real nervous, does Google track my movement? Does Google, through this phone, know that I have moved here and moved over to the left? It's either yes or no.
Not by default. There may be a Google service which you've opted in to use, and if
So Google knows that I am moving over there. It's not a trick question. You know, you make $100 million a year, you ought to be able to answer that question. Does Google know through this phone that I am moving over there and sit next to Mr. Johnson, which would make him real nervous? It's his question. It's yes or no.
I wouldn't be able to answer without looking at.
You can't say yes or no.
Without knowing more details, sir.
April 19th, 2020, Google and YouTube announce a policy censoring the content that conflicts with recommendations of the World Health Organization. Think about that. The World Health Organization, the organization that lied to us, the organization that shilled for China, and if you contradict something they say, they can say whatever they want. They can lie for China, they can shill for China. You say something against them, you get censored. June 29, 2020, Amazon bans President Trump's account on Twitch after he raises concerns about defunding the police. June 4th, 2020, Amazon bans a book critical of the coronavirus lockdowns written by a conservative commentator. May 27, 2020, Amazon Smile won't let you give to the Family Research Defense Fund, but you can give to Planned Parenthood. 19th, 2020, takes down post from President Trump's re-election campaign. November 1st, 2018, Facebook silences a pro-life organization's advertisement. May 19th, 2016, former Facebook employees admit Facebook routinely suppresses conservative views. And I haven't even mentioned Twitter, who we actually invited, Mr. Chairman. We asked for you guys to invite him as one of our witnesses. You guys said no. I haven't even mentioned them 2 years ago. They shadow banned 2 members of this committee. 4 members of Congress were shadow banned 2 years ago. 435 in the House, 100 in the Senate, 535. Only 4. Meadows, Nunes, Jordan. Only 4 get shadow banned. And of course, what did Mr. Dorsey tell us? He said, "Oh, it was just a glitch in our algorithm." I asked him, what'd you put in the algorithm? The names Gates, Meadows, Nunes, Jordan? I mean, if I had a nickel for every time I heard it was just a glitch, I wouldn't be as wealthy as our witnesses, but I'd be doing all right.
It's reported that Donald Trump Jr. got taken down for a period of time because he put something up on the efficacy of... I wouldn't take it myself, but there still is a debate on is effective either in treating or preventing COVID-19. And I think that this is a legitimate matter of discussion. And it would be up to a patient and their doctor to determine whether hydroxychloroquine was the correct medication, given circumstances. Why did that happen?
Congressman, well, first to be clear, I think what you might be referring to happened on Twitter, so it's hard for me to speak to that, but I can talk to our policies about this. We do prohibit content that will lead to imminent risk of harm, and stating that there's a proven cure for COVID when there is in fact none might encourage someone to go take something that could have some adverse effects. So we do take that down. We do not prohibit discussion around trials or people saying that they think that things might work or personal experiences with experimental drugs. But if someone is going to say something is proven when in fact it is not, that could lead people
Wouldn't that be up
to make
for
decisions
somebody
on their
on
own.
the other side of the issue to say that this is not proven? And, I know as a fact that, for people with certain conditions is contraindicated and they shouldn't take it on that. But wouldn't that be up to somebody else, to say, okay, what somebody posted really isn't true and here's what the facts are, rather than having a Twitter or a Facebook take it down?
A bad position for us to be in and not what we should be doing. But on specific claims, if someone is going to go out and say that hydroxychloroquine is proven to cure COVID, when in fact it has not been proven to cure COVID, and that statement could lead people to take a drug that is harmful to people, we think that we should take that down. That could cause imminent risk of harm.
The Stop Hate for Profit campaign is a coalition that includes the Color of Change, the Anti-Defamation League, and other civil rights. Targeting Facebook right now for a boycott because of the rapid spread of hate messages online, the presence of Boogaloo and other right-wing extremist groups trying to infiltrate and disrupt Black Lives Matter protests, and the fact that alt-right, racist, and anti-Semitic content flourishes on Facebook. So they're asking you to remove these pages and essentially to join the movement for civil rights by not allowing that kind of content. Their boycotters include a lot of big companies, including Levi's, McDonald's, VW, Heineken, and so on. But you seem not to be that moved by their campaign, and I just wonder what you think about what they're asking you to do.
Congressman, thanks. We're very focused on fighting against election interference, and we're also very focused on fighting against hate speech, and our commitments to those issues and fighting them go back years before this recent movement. Since 2016, the defenses that the company has built up to help secure elections, not just in the US, but around the world, I think are some of the most advanced that any company or government has in the world now. We routinely now collaborate with law enforcement agencies and are able to sometimes identify threats coming from other countries before governments are even able to. In terms of fighting hate, we've built really sophisticated systems. Our goal is to identify it before anyone even sees it on the platform. And we built AI systems and, as I mentioned, have tens of thousands of people working on safety and security with the goal of getting this stuff down so that way before people even see it. And right now we're able to proactively identify 89% of the hate speech that we take down before I think it's even seen by other people. So, I want to do better percent. I'd like to get that to 99%. But we have a massive investment here. We invest billions of dollars.
My time's almost out. Can you just address the proliferation of fake accounts? I understand annually you get 6.5 billion fake accounts produced there, but in some sense you have a profit motive that's linked to that because that's what's reported to your investors, the number of accounts. Are you working zealously to try to ferret out these fake accounts that are used to spread hate and disinformation?
Gentleman's time has expired, but the witness may answer the question.
Congressman, absolutely. We work hard on this. We take down billions of fake accounts a year. A lot of that is just people trying to set up accounts to spam people for commercial reasons. A very small percent of that are nation states focused on trying to find those. Having fake and harmful content on our platform does not help our business. It hurts our business. People do not want to see that stuff, and they use our services less when they do. So we are aligned with people in order to take that down, and we invest billions of dollars a year in doing so.
That's true, Mr. Zuckerberg. How do you explain that on Monday, the second most popular post on Facebook was a video claiming that you don't need a mask and hydroxychloroquine is a cure for COVID. And in the first 5 hours after being posted on Facebook, it racked up 20 million views and over 100,000 comments before Facebook acted to remove it.
Well, Congressman, a lot of people shared that, and we did take it down because it violates our policies.
20 million people saw it over the period of 5 hours. I mean, doesn't that suggest, Bert, that your platform is so big that even with the right policies in place, you can't contain deadly content?
Congressman, I don't think so. I think we have on COVID misinformation in particular, a relatively good track record of fighting and taking down lots of false content, as well as putting up authoritative information. We have built a COVID information center
I understand
with
that.
authoritative information from health officials.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. I just have one
parts of the world within 3 months and then was essentially wiped out.
Elaine Reyes spoke to Scott Bowell, the head of vaccine surveillance at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
We haven't seen that level of mortality with recent outbreaks. So the closest that we've come is the SARS epidemic of 2003 and the pandemic of influenza of 2009. And if you put those two together, you get the sense of what a very severe epidemic would be like. SARS spread very, very quickly from southern China to lots of parts of the world within 3 months and then was essentially wiped out. It was severe. It killed maybe 10% of the people that it infected. In contrast, the H1N1 pandemic of influenza of 2009 spread worldwide from California and Mexico all across the world within weeks. Much quicker, infected many more people, but fortunately had a much lower mortality rate. There's really no reason that the next pandemic won't be some combination of those two pathogens, both lethal as SARS was and highly transmissible as H1N1 influenza was. And that's the kind of thing that the GPMB, this new board, was confronting when they were thinking about the threat of the next pandemic.
So other than getting vaccinated, some steps that people can take to prevent something like that from happening to them?
Currently, a vaccine is unlikely to be ready in the early weeks of the next pandemic, and so people should not assume that they're going to be protected by a vaccine. We should be putting in place the steps that are needed to develop a vaccine as quickly as possible, and that was one of the key recommendations of this new board. But in addition, people need to be able to depend on their governments in being able to pick up the epidemic early, respond effectively. Basic things like knowing who's in charge and planning ahead. These are the kinds of things that the GPMB is in this first.
And how realistic is that coordinating a future response among governments across borders?
We have seen that work better and better over the last 10 years or so. So in the wake of SARS, the world's countries got together and all countries agreed to comply with the international health regulations that were rewritten in 2005. That's rare circumstances where all countries around the world agree on anything. But the threat that comes from these kinds of things brought countries together to prepare. So I'm actually optimistic that if there was a global threat like the one that we're talking about, that countries will want to work together. But it's a matter of practicing ahead of time, and the time to get these things ready to figure out who's in charge and how this is going to work is now, and this is the point that the GPMB is making.
Even so, some people only exhibit mild flu-like symptoms, not requiring treatment in a hospital. Alarmingly, those people are able to walk around and spread the virus, not realizing they are doing so. Even worse, international travelers have been arriving at their destinations symptom-free, but within a matter of hours, becoming ill. Travel-related cases have blossomed into outbreaks in a number of locations, known faster than health authorities could respond and contain them.
I'm sure there are new technologies that may help, but it's going to be difficult. I am not optimistic about having a vaccine in time to be relevant during this pandemic. Even if we discover a good vaccine candidate, we're starting from scratch. Test safety and efficacy, typically years. Global manufacturing will still need to be established. Again, multiple hurdles.
We simply can't rely on these old timelines and processes. This is a crisis. We have to move beyond these issues. It may be complicated, difficult, but if we dedicate all available resources, this can happen. Also, keep in mind, we need effective treatments sooner rather than later. Extranavir is an antiviral drug. Scientists have told me this could be effective. We need to start treating people immediately.
While I agree Extranavir does look promising, it's currently used for treating HIV. However, it's not manufactured on the scale needed for treating this many people. And will we just stop using it for HIV treatment? How will we get this drug needed? Who decides who has priority for the limited amounts we do have. We both know countries are hoarding extranavir.
Doctor, in my opinion, you are lost in the details. With enough money and political will, anything is possible. Let's get going on this now.
Thank you. First up is economist Dave Campbell. Are we out of money?
The best way to answer that is no, we are not yet. But the fact is we are trending in a dangerous direction and something needs to change.
You have been quite vocal about that and generated some controversy along the way.
Well, look, you know me. I try to avoid controversy. But come on, common sense says it shouldn't be controversial to suggest a response prioritize lives and livelihoods. Absolutely, we need to save lives. We all know someone who's been affected by caps. But we literally cannot afford a heavy-handed response that suffocates our economy. Pragmatism is a wise choice. I mean, what exactly are the risks and benefits of slowing air travel, of staying home from work, closing schools, disrupting supply chains, interfering with our reliable channels of communication and news? Sure, some of these steps can help slow caps, but often only marginally and with serious costs. When this is all over, some families, some cities, will have suffered more from our actions than from caps.
Actually, in a way, we agree. Responders, whether international organizations, governments, or even employers and families, each are weighing risks and benefits. And there is not a one-size-fits-all approach, as there are different appetites for risk. What I will say, in my mind, our response should aim to protect every life we can.
Of course, but let's frank, letting the global economy slow to a halt puts lives at risk.
Yes, but there does need to be a balance.
Okay, you both agree balance is paramount. Theoretically, that's an easy choice, but leaders are now faced with very real and very tough decisions. Just last week, traditional sources for emergency funding had exceeded their limits. As new mechanisms are being discussed, there is consideration as whether funds should primarily support health emergency response or prop up economies.
Precisely. And we do need these funds sooner rather than later. Funding shortening lives at risk and extending this devastating crisis.
We seem to agree. We cannot shortchange the health response, but I suspect we disagree when I suggest that some of these funds are best used to save jobs and critical industries. National leaders certainly have this on top of their minds during the ongoing debates.
Alarming news emerging from social media companies today about the CAPS pandemic. Twitter and Facebook are reporting they've identified and deleted a disturbing number of accounts dedicated to spreading disinformation about the outbreak. For more on this, we go to our correspondent, Catalina Parks.
Chen, these accounts were created by several state-sponsored groups intending to sow political discord, and some individuals are seemingly seeking to gain financial advantages. Violence against healthcare workers and minority populations has been increasing. A recent riot highlights the real danger in these posts. Countries are reacting in different ways as to how best to manage the overwhelming amounts of dis and misinformation circulating over the internet. In some cases, limited internet shutdowns are being implemented to quell panic.
Thank you, Catalina. For more on this, we are joined by experts in crisis communications and social media, Kevin McAleese and C.
To me, it is clear countries need to make strong efforts to manage both mis- and disinformation. We know social media companies are working around the clock to combat these disinformation campaigns. The task of identifying every bad actor is immense. And experts agree that new disinformation campaigns are being generated every day. This is a huge problem that's going to keep us from ending the pandemic and might even lead to the fall of governments, as we saw in the Arab Spring. If the solution means controlling and reducing access to information, I think it's the right choice.
I agree with Kevin. This is a big problem and doesn't even account for the massive amounts of misinformation being generated by legitimate users about the pandemic. But it's not just trolls who are spreading the fake news. It's often political leaders themselves. Who's to judge what's real or not? Would we trust every government to separate truth from lies?
I think this is more than just keeping the bad information out. It's also about making sure real public health information reaches the public. News is found from outlets other than social media. News organizations public health groups and companies need to help people take the right actions to protect themselves by promoting accurate, real information about the outbreak.
More videos will be uploaded soon. Thanks for watching, and do not forget to subscribe, like, share and leave your thoughts in the comment section below.